Hello, everyone. Just a quick note about the episode you're about to see. I made a mistake in some of the numbers that I quoted, so I did a little audio editing and replaced the incorrect wording with the proper wording. So you will notice as you listen to this episode that there are a couple of times where the voice of the correction does not match the tone of voice of when I was doing the rest of the episode. So ignore that. Just remember that you now have the correct information in your head and you can move on from there. That's all I have. Enjoy the episode. Hello everyone, it's DJ. This program or this episode was not in my original list of topics to cover. It just happened to be a very interesting question from a Speakpipe message that I received, so I decided to throw it into the usual lineup. It's a very good question, and I thought it would be worthwhile to put out to everyone rather than just sending the questioner an answer by email. So here we go. And many thanks to Mike for his question on Speakpipe. Like I said, had a great question from a reservist who made me realize that I left some information out when I was talking about disability retirements. So I'm going to fix that today. Mike sent me a question on the Speakpipe widget. Unfortunately, the audio was not that good. It was very soft. So even after a lot of audio editing, I was not able to get it up to good enough quality to play it for you. So instead, I'll just read you a paraphrased version of that question, which I'll expand a little bit or have expanded a little bit to add some clarity and I think get to the heart of what Mike was trying to ask. And Mike, if you're watching and I get this wrong, please let me know so I can fix it for everyone else. Alright, so the question from Mike is, when a reservist is being reviewed by the disability board and they determine he should be placed on the let me try that again. I'll just start the whole thing over here. When a reservist is being reviewed by the disability board and they determine he should be placed on the temporary disability retired list, will he instead be placed on the permanent list if he has 20 qualifying years? If the board is looking at years of service, are they considering your retirement points or your actual years of service? I have read subsection 1208 of Title 10, United States Code, but I can't figure out how they calculate years of service. How are years of service and retired pay actually calculated? So that's the question from Mike. And yes, it's true that if you read any sort of law, it can be very confusing. The reason for this is legalese rather than just saying something outright. In simple English, oh my, imagine that. Rather than doing that, they very often refer you to other sections of law. For example, I'll quote from the section that Mike read. And that section was talking about computing retired pay for a reservist for disability retirement purposes. As far as years of equivalent active duty service would be calculated, it says, the number of years of service that he would count if he were computing his years of service under Section 12733 of this title. What? Alright, see what I mean? So the law doesn't just say how creditable service is calculated. It basically says, go look somewhere else. Leave me alone, go somewhere else. Go ask your mother, stuff like that. And expects you to either know what that other section of law is, or go there, read it, and comprehend it, which, especially when it comes to law, is sometimes asking quite a bit. Even someone like me who has read retirement law for years, can find this stuff often confusing and, as a result, quite frustrating. And just in case you're serious, that quote is saying that in the case of disability retirement, you would compute a reservist's retirement eligibility the same way you would for a reserve retirement. A little bit more on that as we go, because there are a lot of ifs involved when we're talking disability retirement, as I'm sure you know if you've seen the other episodes, or in podcast land heard the other episodes. So let's dive into answering Mike's question here. First of all, I'm going to break it down into its components and list them out for you. So here they are. There are actually three questions, I believe, in what Mike was asking. So question one, would a reservist be placed on the permanent disability list if he has 20 qualifying years, even if the disability board says he should go to the temporary list? It's kind of long, but we'll get to that one. Question two, how does the board calculate years of service? Question three, is disability pay based on your branch of services disability rating or your retirement points? Okay, so as I answer these questions, please keep in mind that whenever I talk about disability ratings, I'm talking about the rating from your branch of service. I'm not talking about the disability rating that you have from the Veterans Administration. So let's go to question one. Would a reservist be placed on the permanent disability list if he has 20 qualifying years, even if the disability board says he should go to the temporary list? That's quite a mouthful. All right, so for the purposes of this question, the number of retirement points and the number of qualifying years of service are not part of the equation until later. So if the Disability Evaluation Board determines that a reservist should go to the temporary disability retired list, then that's where the reservist will go. There's no automatic placement on the permanent list if you have 20 or more years of reserve service or active duty service. Once you are on the temporary disabled list, your condition will be reevaluated periodically. And as your situation changes, then your status could change. By the way, the maximum you can stay on the temporary list is now 3 years. So let's say that you've been reviewed and something has changed, or maybe not. There are several things that can happen to you at this point. One, and this is rare, is you could be found fit for duty and return to service. So I think I've seen this once in my, how long has it been now? 9 years as a retirement services officer. I've seen one person come off of the temporary disabled list and return to duty. But it can happen. So that person came out of retirement and went back to actively drilling. So there is some hope there. More often than not, this other thing happens. The reservist's disability has remained stable or worsened, it has not improved, and one of four things then happens. All right. And before I read off the four things, there's a lot of ifs and ands here, so I actually recommend that you go to the article that will go live on Friday and read them, just in case it gets a little confusing hearing them in an audible format. But here we go. So let's say the disability conditions have either stayed the same or gotten worse. And it's time for some sort of change. The member cannot stay on the temporary retired list anymore. So if his disability rating is less than 30% and he has less than 15 qualifying years of service, qualifying means you have at least 50 retirement points per year, then he is offered a severance package and separated from service. The reservist service is considered to have been bought out if he takes this severance pay, and it will not count for military retirement or compensation from the Veterans Administration unless that severance pay is recouped. Keep that in mind if you think you're going to just go across the street to the VA and get money from them. You will not unless you repay that severance or don't take it in the first place. Second option, if the disability rating is less than 30% and the reservist has 15, at least 15, but less than 20 qualifying years of reserve service, then an early notice of eligibility for retired pay, or colloquially called a 15-year letter, will be generated, and that member will be transferred to the retired reserve, where he will wait for the right age to be eligible to receive retired pay. Whew! Already a lot of information here. So, third option, if the member's condition has remained stable or worsened. If the branch of services disability rating is, I have a typo on my script. If the branch of services disability rating is less than 30% and he has 20 or more years of qualifying reserve service, then the member will be transferred to the retired reserve, just like the guy who got the 15-year letter, and he will wait for the age at which he can receive retired pay. It's assumed that he already has a 20-year letter at this point. Last option. If his branch of services disability rating is at least 30%, 30%, he is placed on the permanent disability retired list and immediately retired. And retired pay begins immediately. The minimum pay while on the temporary disabled retired list is 50%. If the reservist's final disability rating is less than 50%, then the amount of retired pay will go down. So keep that in mind. Just because you're getting 50% now doesn't necessarily mean it will stay that way. In fact, for most of the temporary people that I have seen, most of the people who were on the temporary disabled list who were then transferred to the permanent list, most of the time the rating went down. So don't be surprised. So now let's finally move on to Mike's second question. How does the board calculate years of service? Well, when they're looking at years of service, that is only for the purpose of calculating retired pay, at least in this scenario. It only applies if the reservist is going to be placed on a disability retirement list. The board takes the total number of creditable retirement points and divides that by 360. This gives them this gives them the number of equivalent active duty years of service. If you are enrolled in the legacy retirement system, which is the plan in effect prior to 1 January 2018, then those years of equivalent active duty are multiplied by 2.5%. If you are enrolled in the blended retirement system, which means you either switch to it on January 1st this year, or you enlisted on January 1st or after of 2018, then you're under the blended retirement system, and the equivalent years of service are multiplied by 2%. A quicker way to determine which percentage applies to you is like this. And if you don't know which system applies to you, at least as of the time of recording this, then it's safe to assume very likely you are under the legacy retirement system. So here are the two equations you can use to determine roughly what your percentage of what your percentage of base pay would be based on equivalent active duty. So if you're under the legacy system, then you would take retirement points, creditable retirement points, and divide that by 14,400. So I'll put that at the bottom of the screen for those of you watching in the video land so you can see it. If you are under the blended retirement system, then you would take the number of creditable retirement points and divide them by 18,000. That gives you the percentage you would have based on equivalent active duty. That leads us right into Mike's third question. Is disability pay based on your branch of services disability rating or your retirement points? And the short answer is whichever is higher. So disability pay is a percentage of base pay for your pay grade and years of service, as we all know. The percentage is either your branch of services disability rating or your equivalent years of active duty, whichever is higher. You can look in, well, okay, don't look in the law because it's law, but the English version is whichever is higher. So if your length of service, i.e. retirement points version is higher, then you will receive that amount. And if your disability rating percentage is higher, you'll receive that. For example, if your disability rating is 30%, but you have more than 4,320 retirement points, then, at least if you're under the legacy system, then your retired pay will be based on your retirement points. Otherwise, it's based on your branch of service disability rating. All right, I've ranted on for 16 minutes now. I think it's time to wrap up. I've probably confused as many people as I've helped so far. I know this can lead to just as many questions as it answers. So I'm going to put some links in the references section that will help hopefully explain how disability evaluation boards work. There's a summary of how they work that was written by the Army's 4th Infantry Division. So ignore the typos. It was written by lawyers. They're good at reading law, not writing. That's a joke, people. It's very obviously written from an active duty perspective, so be sure to have a salt shaker nearby. You'll need a few grains, I'm sure, but it's still very useful information. So take a look at that. I'll also put links to both of the sections of law that I mentioned if you want to abuse yourself and read Title 10 law. So Mike, I hope this helps. Like I said, I hope the material did not create more questions than it answered. If you or anyone else out there have any other questions, then please drop me a message either by Speakpipe or in the comments section or by email. I'm here to answer them, so make use of it. All right. And now let me just throw out a couple of announcements real quick, since this is the right time to do so. If you were not already aware, then I recently started a radio program, a shortwave radio program on 7780 kilohertz. The program airs at 1630 every Sunday. And if you're in different time zones, then consider universal time of 2030 and just adjust based on your particular time zone. So 1630 Eastern Standard Time on Sunday is when the shortwave radio program airs. And on Tuesday, after each episode, I will post it to SoundCloud so that if you missed it on the radio, you can hear it there. Also, if you are on YouTube, then be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Make good use of those, both comments and subscriptions, as well as the like button, of course, help to grow this audience and get this information into more heads. If you're listening out there in podcast land, then please go to iTunes or Stitcher and write a review of this podcast. Let other people know what you think. That also helps people decide whether or not they want to listen to some crazy guy with a Georgia accent, or whether they think he's worth their time or not. Hopefully they decide yes. And of course, on the articles, please spread those around, just like podcasts and on YouTube. Hit that share button and let other people out there know this information so they can make good decisions. So again, Mike, thank you for this question. It's most appreciated. And please send any other questions you might have. That's for all of you. By the way, if you did not know, there is a widget on the left-hand side of the website for Speakpipe, which will let you send an audio file to me, just like Mike did. Please check your microphone though. Make sure it works well so I don't get something very, very soft. All right. So that's all for today. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for your service, and join me next week. Have a great day.